This tutorial is for people who have chosen to make a microblog for their Unit 2 project. So, as you probably already know, a microblog is just kind of like a smaller, more condensed version of a blog. Probably we're looking at the most popular microblogging site in the history of the internet right now. However far it's fallen from grace recently. I'm going to refer to it here as Twitter. You can see it still refers to itself as Twitter too, so that's what we're going to call it. But yeah, I figured the best thing to do here, since we all know how to, do the mechanics of creating a social media account, signing up for things and things like that. We're going to talk a little bit about the content and what the content is and kind of how to conceptualize your professional identity and ethos when making a professional microblog. We're going to look at 3 examples of platforms here. We're going to look at Twitter. We're going to look at Instagram. And we're also going to look at Tumblr. And we're going to talk about some of the different things that you might need to know in order to put together a good profile on any of these sites and start to produce some good content. So we're going to start by talking about Dr. Joy here, who refers to herself as the poet of code. You can see in her website link down here. If we click through to that website and take a look at what she's doing with her branding here, you can see that it's something very specific. Dr. Joy's focus is algorithmic justice, which means she's looking at kind of the different factors in technology that allow for societal and cultural biases to persist through the proliferation and usage of those technologies. So she's working on some really interesting stuff, and a lot of it is rooted in activism. So Dr. Joy is going to be an example for us of a microblogging approach that is more rooted in maybe finding interdisciplinary applications for some of the stuff that she's learned throughout her career in tech. But also, too, activism as well. You can see that this account is very serious-minded. And we'll talk about kind of how she, puts together her ethos as she's working here. We're also going to take a look at this account, not because I think it's a particularly good account or because I am a big fan of Neil deGrasse Tyson or anything. I would say just jump one generation back to Carl Sagan and work from there if you want to know about Neil's work. But we'll look at this account simply because it's one of the only ones that Twitter will let me look at without making a subscription, and I'm not going to do that. But you'll see that Twitter tends to be a place where people perform their professional ethos with a little bit more seriousness when it comes to writing about science, writing about tech, writing about technical disciplines. Whereas Instagram seems to be more of a place where people try to have fun. So we're going to look at this account too. This is Nina. She works for Google as a computer scientist. She makes videos about that and about other aspects of science that interest her. And we'll take a look at how she uses this microblogging platform to talk about her work. However, we're also going to look at this account here, which is another example of how you can approach kind of your work on these microblogs. You can do what these first 3 people have done, which is kind of carve out a unique space and niche for yourself and create your own content, or you can be an aggregator. This account here is a perfectly fine aggregation account. We'll look at how they've put together their kind of professional ethos here and what it is that they're trying to get across. From there, we're going to jump to Tumblr. We'll talk a little bit about a couple of different kinds of Tumblr accounts. So Tumblr, after Twitter, probably the second most successful microblogging site. And you'll see that different from Twitter, there is a little bit more kind of, I think, weight to the posts here in terms of the amount of content. You're not necessarily limited to certain numbers of characters or words or things like that. So people can kind of branch off and deliver a little bit more information on this platform, I think. We're also going to look at this engineering thoughts. We've got some engineering memes here. This is another example of how people use these accounts to have fun and entertain people and make concepts and technical disciplines more accessible. The last thing we'll do is we'll take a look at Canva as a way of producing visual content for your microblog. So let's jump back into Twitter here. I think we all know how people use Twitter at this point. We're putting short, text-based communications out into the world that try to get people usually to click through to some links or watch some other content, or at the very least interact in the comments, get some kind of a conversation going. This again is Dr. Joy's profile here, and one of the things that you notice right off the bat is that even from her banner image here, she's being kind of very upfront about the fact that her work has to do with identity, right? I am human. I am many. I am I. I am. Ain't I a woman? Be a man. Things like that. So she's working with this concept of identity and looking at the intersection between identity and technology. You'll notice that she does some things right away to establish a pretty impressive professional ethos. So she's got this great headshot of herself standing in front of what is obviously some kind of a red carpet background at some kind of awards show. I can't see exactly what it is. It's the National Academy of something. So immediately that conveys a heavy amount of credibility. This is a person who is invited to these kind of events, is awarded at these kind of events. You can also see that she identifies herself as the founder of the Algorithmic Justice League. She links to her Instagram, which is kind of, more of a personal account for her. She calls herself a warrior artist. And this is interesting for Dr. Joy's work because I think that she's trying to reach more than just a technical audience here. She does consider herself, again, a poet. And so in that way, she's trying to do more than kind of just saying, I'm talking about technology. Again, she's looking for that intersection between the arts and technology and the way we express identity through art. She also identifies herself as a computer scientist and an MIT PhD and specifies that the views here are her own, that she's not communicating for any of these institutions that she's included in her bio with this Twitter, but this Twitter is her own. She links out to a website, which is a very good professional website. If you have a good professional website, you'll want to do that too. And you can see, of course, her follower numbers and things like that, which further enhance, her credibility by showing that she has a pretty wide audience. So, this is the makings of a really, really good Twitter profile right here. It's colorful, but at the same time, it's subtle in its approach and design. Every aspect of the profile is communicating something about Dr. Joy's work and identity. And that's really what we want to strive for here, is something where on impact, just by looking, someone can say, oh, this is a lot of thought has been put into this by a person who is highly creditable in their field. So as we scan on here, we can look at some of the things that Dr. Joy is tweeting about. So here she's tweeting about an appearance that she made on 60 Minutes, an interview with Anderson Cooper. This is in response to somebody else's tweet here. And I think that this is, emblematic of how Twitter works, right? It's a discussion-based format. So what you want to do is try to ground your participation in this platform in discussion, in interaction, in a sense of, community interaction. Here she talks about the role of facial recognition in the arrest of this pregnant woman and the obvious physical and psychological distress that it caused her. You can see that this is an image that she's produced for this particular tweet right here. And if we link out if I can read the New York Times, I can't. So we can't see if that comes directly from the New York Times article, but I don't think that it does. I think it's something that she probably put together herself. So one of the first things that you're going to need to know how to do when you put together a profile like this is work with images. Maybe you've already got a professional headshot. Maybe you don't. Maybe you've had something similarly created by the college that you can use. Or maybe this is something that you want to try to stage and take on your own. Maybe you have a friend who's a photographer, or you're just pretty good at taking selfies. Try to do what Dr. Joy has done here. Find yourself, a rhetorically appropriate location in which to take your picture. So there's got to be somewhere on campus, right, that kind of communicates that idea of tech and the technical disciplines and science. So that might be a good idea. And if you have photos of yourself from events like this, you want to do that. Twitter will resize the photo for you. You'll get to choose the crop. But one thing you're going to have to do is create a banner. If your Twitter account is just kind of the standard logo, the default logo, and you don't have a banner, I don't really think that that's going to attract attention. So one of the first things that you're going to have to do here, and this is where I always start with this stuff, it seems very kind of boneheaded, but it really works. So Twitter banner size, and this will give you your dimensions for your banner. So you've got to make an image here that's 1500 by 500 pixels. And that might seem like, well, how do I do that, right? Well, I use this program here called Canva, or application called Canva, I should say. And Canva, I find, is really great because it has less free stuff available than it did before, but it has a lot of good free options that you can use. And you can see they've got some templates that you can work with here, but you can also do a custom size. So if I want to make my Twitter banner at 500 or 1500 by 500 pixels, I can do that. This is going to create a template for me to work off of. And then from there, I can start to look at some of the different options that they give me for things that I might want to use. So let's start with photos, and let's do the same thing I did when putting together, the backgrounds I should say maybe like the cut images for the videos that I make for you guys. I just search for, tech or science or something like that. And you can pop one of these prefabbed images like this circuit board thing, stretch it out a little bit, make it fit the template. And then from there, let's say I want to add like a nice outline or something. So this one fits the color scheme. Well, actually, we can change the color of it, which is great. We can get something that kind of contrasts what we already have. So let's say, we're using blues and purples. So why not go for a red for accent here? And then this too, you can stretch it out and try to make it, fit the parameters of what you're working with. And then from there, maybe you want to put some text in. You can add some text. So let's say, something like maybe your account is going to deal with like common problems in programming that you want to troubleshoot. So you could say something like, bits and bytes troubleshooting on Twitter or something like that. So I've just made that up. It's terrible and you shouldn't use it. But the idea is kind of there that it has to do with, what you're trying to do on Twitter. And the other thing you have to make sure that you're accounting for is that part of that banner is going to be obscured by that little your profile picture right there. So you want to keep in mind that you don't want to put anything in this lower left corner, but you can change the font. You can add some effects to your text if you want to make it, pop a little bit more. I like to add an outline, and then maybe, work with my colors a little bit to find something that makes it pop a little bit more. This banner is not good, but this is an example of how to make the kind of banner that you would want to make for your Twitter profile. And from that point on, really what you're thinking about then is just your content. And I would always say that starts with who you follow. So if we look at I can't look at who Dr. Joy is following because I don't want to join X, but that would be, I think, the best way to get started is to build a good feed for yourself. Because if you have a good feed for yourself, then there's going to be plenty of content for you to reblog. And I guess in this context, retweet or repost or whatever they're calling it now. But yeah, you want to have a good feed because that feed is what's going to inspire you to keep posting every day, give you ideas for what you can post, and help you build a community with other creators on the platform. So that's Dr. Joy's profile and a little bit about how to put together a good a Twitter profile if you're a professional scientist or technical person. We're going to look at Neil deGrasse Tyson's now. And right off the bat, you can see like this banner that he has. Oh, while it's a cool image, doesn't really tell us very much about Neil or what he's doing here. We can also see, his profile picture is a camera phone selfie, which is fine, if you want to go that route. But this kind of gives us a cue, right, that this is going to be a little bit more of an informal profile. Neil is also, he's not doing as much to build our sense of his credibility here. He just says he's an astrophysicist. He's from New York City. He's got a website. If we click through to the website, I'm sure that it's a good website. He's Neil deGrasse Tyson. Yeah, it's okay, a little bland from a design standpoint, but a nice, robust menu here and plenty of content to click through. So he's not doing as much here to build his ethos, though, as Dr. Joy is. And I think that makes sense because he's a public figure already. He's got, almost 15 million followers. So that's something to consider, too, is that we're not coming from that standpoint. But one of the things that you'll see that Neil deGrasse Tyson does, of course, he's got some posts here that kind of, demonstrate how he's, at the upper echelons of the field that he's in astrophysics. But he's also got other tweets here that are kind of more like meme, right? So scientists, we produced the first ever image of a supermassive black hole. Response, ooh. Scientists, we've concluded that humans are catastrophically warming the Earth. That conflicts with what I want to be true, so it must be false. So he's doing a little bit of social commentary here. And he's talking about how, we kind of selectively choose in terms of public opinion when we want to trust science and when we don't, based on, how it intersects with our political views. But that's kind of what he's known for, is kind of being a little bit, I guess I would call it a little bit of an edgelord on Twitter. And so that's something that I think you can do on this platform, is try to be a little bit incendiary, a little bit controversial, and a little bit memey too, maybe trying to communicate things in ways that are, easily accessible to an audience that appreciates humor, that wants to laugh. I'm not going to say that Neil's Twitter is, the funniest Twitter. He also has kind of a reputation for sort of stepping in it with some of his clapbacks, especially when he criticizes, I think the realisticness of science and science fiction movies and things like that. So these are kind of the two poles, right? Dr. Joy is using this platform to, I think, express the importance and seriousness of her work. I think Neil deGrasse Tyson is just trying to interact with people and have fun and maybe make you laugh, but make you think from time to time as well. So that's Twitter. That's what we do on Twitter. If you're not interested in Twitter, but you think that this microblogging thing is the thing for you, Instagram might be a better platform. I think if you're a more visual person, Instagram is probably the platform for you. And early on, Instagram was specifically a photo sharing platform, but it's become much more geared around video content, similar to TikTok lately. If you haven't been using Instagram, we now have this option up here, which is stories. Stories are usually some kind of dynamic video-based content. You can also keep your highlights here. Nina is a person who likes to fish, so you can see that this trip to Florida, she's sharing some of her just kind of like personal hobbies with you as well. Here's, a video from her fishing trip. But her content is definitely geared towards, one, sharing her interest in things like, topics related to science, but also talking about her work as a programmer. So let's talk about this video here. We'll take a quick watch and a quick listen to what she's doing.
Where they measure the performance of ChatGPT in March and June of this year in 4 subjects: math, dangerous subjects, generating code, and visual reasoning. I read the paper in TLDR, the performance on almost all subjects have decreased. But in particular, I just want to highlight the code generation performance is really down. So to my fellow software engineers, rejoice, because we're not gonna get replaced yet. But also cry, because now ChatGPT can't help you solve your coding issues. But I think likely what's happening.
So that's an example where she's talking about her perspective on ChatGPT and writing code as a software engineer, as a computer engineer. So she also does content that is kind of just more about, general science stuff. So this is an interesting video that she did about the fastest moving object that humans have ever projected into space.
In my last video, I talked about how a camera in 1957 was able to capture a flying manhole at 1,000 frames per second.
I'm not sure where the record at 1,000 FPS comes from, but it's very misleading. In 1957, there was no camera capable of doing that kind of slow motion.
Nope. Actually, you're really wrong. Way before the 1957 nuclear test I talked about in my last video, in the 1930s, Eastman Kodak already created a camera that can run 60mm films at 1,000 frames per second. The camera was purchased by Bell Telephone Laboratories, now known as Nokia Bell Labs, and they developed the camera to be able to do up to 5,000 frames per second. And they named this camera FastAct. And June 23rd, 1950, Bell sold this design to Wollensack Optical Company, and they improved this camera to do 18,000 frames per second. You see, the invention of high-speed cameras was needed for nuclear bomb testings. In order to create a nuclear reaction and achieve critical mass, a piece of plutonium that's about the size of a baseball had to be compressed, I'm running out, into half of its size. And they would do this with an array of explosives, 32 to be exact. All 32 of them had to be triggered within 1 microsecond, so they needed to use a high-speed camera to see how effective this explosion around the core was. Thus, there was a ridiculous amount of progress made on high-speed cameras at that time. And now you know.
So this is a really savvy video for a couple of reasons. The first is she's talking about something that is topical, right? Oppenheimer has just come out. And she's talking about the nuclear experiments that movie discusses as well. But she's talking about it from kind of a unique perspective of this one particular interesting phenomenon that she wants to talk about. But at the same time, she's also creating connections between this content and her previous content, but also a sense of community by responding directly to somebody who had criticized her last video and claimed that she had, spread some erroneous information in that video. So you can also see too that there's like some personal branding going on here where she's like, around her house, she's sitting with her dog. It feels like you're kind of just having a conversation with Nina. And that's really, I think, what you would want to go for on this platform. You'll notice too that these videos are edited. I think actually we can see this part at the end is probably the program that she's using to do the editing on this video, CapCut. We'll talk a little bit about video editing in this video, but I think if you want to get into that, I'm going to produce a video for the vlog project that's going to go into more detail about video editing. So you'll want to look at that. But that's kind of what we learn from a profile like this, right? Professional expertise is something that Nina wants to talk about. At the same time, she wants to talk about her general interest in science, engage with the community that she's building through her content. But at the same time, she's also trying to advance a little bit of her personal identity too, and kind of give you a sense of, getting to know her beyond just the work that she does. At the same time, she also does some socially conscious content as well, such as this video here, where she makes a little bit of a joke about how gender dynamics in STEM fields
Here's how you
work.
know you're pretty. Computer science version. Okay, so basically when you're in your computer science class and you realize that every single time you're discussing your own solutions, some guy will always question the validity of your solution, or they question how the heck you were able to come up with it on your own. You're just too pretty for them. They just feel intimidated that a person with good hygiene and actually takes care of their physical appearance is in the same class as them. So if it happens again, don't feel like you're not good enough to be in computer science. Here's how you know you're pretty.
So that kind of content too is something that's, obviously geared towards an audience that is following her because they're interested in having a woman's perspective on what it's like to be in STEM. And she's, of course, calling back to centuries old biases that persist, misogynistic biases that exist in the STEM fields, and the way that they, disenfranchise young women from wanting to be involved in STEM. And she's doing it in, a pithy way here. She's being a little bit glib. But at the same time, the message gets across. And I think this is a really good example of a robust kind of microblog profile. You can see she identifies herself as a video creator in her bio here. Her bio picture is just a selfie, which I think works better on Instagram than it does on Twitter. But if you click this link here, you can see that she's got links out to some other promotional opportunities, some other ways to interact with her, TikTok, YouTube. Lots of people use these kinds of things. So there's one that I like to use, which is called Linktree. I don't currently have a Linktree in my bio, but the thing with Instagram is you can only put one link in your bio. And essentially what Linktree allows you to do is to have one link that leads to multiple links so that people can interface with more of your content and find you in other places on the internet. Now, at the same time on Instagram, not everything is so personality driven. And you can see that Nina's account, she's got close to 200,000 followers. This World of Engineering account has 2.7 million followers. So it's a huge, very popular account. And I haven't really looked through too much of this content yet, but I can already see that some folks that I follow also follow this account as well, including Mark Yoshida, who used to play keys for the Beastie Boys way back when. So these kind of accounts are, widely accessible, and that's the idea. I think they try to take a field that many people view as inaccessible and make it accessible to people. So if we look at the kinds of posts that they're doing here, again, this is a content aggregation account. So this is not all original content, but this content is being borrowed from other places. Most of this content, again, is image and video based. But there's not a lot of personality to it, right? It's really just a demonstration of how that equipment works. And so I don't know what that equipment is. I don't know what that material is. I don't know how impressive it is that material is being, manipulated so easily by that equipment. But I'm sure that somebody out here who studies mechanical engineering right now is really like, oh, wow, that's impressive. I know what's going on there. For most of us, this is just stuff that we would look at and kind of be like, wow, I didn't know this sort of thing was possible. So here you can see that this is a collaborative post, right? And it's obvious what this post is trying to do. This is just something that many of us would never think to do. But if we did think to do it, we would think, wow, this is such a really fun idea. We would probably like to be people who do stuff like this on a day-to-day basis. But at the same time, I'm going to tell you that this is probably dangerous in ways that we can only imagine right now, and that you probably shouldn't do it at all. But you can see that this is a collaboration here. So part of the work that you have to do as a content aggregator is reaching out to other people and saying, hey, I want to feature your content. And you don't necessarily have to get their permission. You can kind of just do it. And a lot of people don't mind because they like for their content to be shared. But if you do want to create this kind of account for this project, then, I think that that's viable. And I think it's something you can do. And I think that these accounts are usually, pretty successful. So one of the things that I would encourage you to do here, again, you're definitely going to need something that's, like this logo up here, more so than just a picture of yourself, because this isn't a personally branded account. You can also see that the name of the account is very kind of general. Here, World of Engineering, IT, Science, Technology, and Engineering. So everything here is very kind of general. It's not super specific. And it's mostly, fun content, interesting content. There's use of hashtags in the descriptions here, but they're not even really, explaining kind of what this technology actually is. It's more so kind of just for you to look at and say like, ooh, ah. Which is very much what Instagram is all about. So that's probably why this, particular account is so popular. From there, we're going to move on to Tumblr. Tumblr, I think, is, maybe less popular now than it was 10 years ago, but it's still pretty popular. And we're going to look at two kinds of accounts on Tumblr. So this is Beakers and Telescopes. Again, the way you would want to start here is by figuring out, okay, so, what's my banner image? What size is a Tumblr banner image? So again, just popping over to Google. And we'll find out 3000 by 1055. We can go to Canva and cook up something like this. Canva's got a ton of, cartoony clip art if you want to use that kind of an approach. You can see that color is really important on Tumblr. This uses kind of this like, I guess cyan and sort of like, and maybe like a lavender kind of color, maybe a little darker than lavender. But yeah, there's a description of what the account is and what it does. There's hashtags obviously being used to connect this account to other content on the platform. And then from there, it's just kind of, posts about interesting science-y type things. So this one I've always liked seeing. I've seen it before. UV colors is common for butterflies. Some species, it's a female-only power. I love these depictions of how, the flowers look different to insects that can see those UV forms. Some of it is just kind of like, fun, maybe even branded content. Like these toys might be something that you can buy. Right there. And a lot of times, yeah, I don't know what this is, but I can't scroll any further on this page at this point, but you get the idea. It's not too dissimilar from this page here. It's not very kind of grounded in personal ethos or anything like that. It's content aggregation. You can see underneath here, this comes from, Greek reporters. So they're pulling stuff in from other platforms or other Tumblr posts and commenting on them. The other way that you can use Tumblr, and I think this is the more popular way of using Tumblr, is, for memes. Tumblr is a very kind of, meme platform. And so here there's some branding done. I think maybe you would want to go a little bit further with your branding than this, and have the branding be kind of rooted in the idea that you're, engaged with meme culture in one way or another. So I follow on Instagram a lot of what are called niche music meme accounts. So let's just look at niche music memes. And you can see that, the way that they're manipulating the text in certain ways here kind of has that meme vibe to it. Maybe another one we could look at would be, band meme 666. This one is, again, you see kind of like that, altered text kind of thing. 666 memes for musicians going steadily downhill, just like your favorite band. So there's definitely some self-deprecating humor there. There's also kind of in niche music memes, this like... I guess this one, I used to follow one called Neutral Milk Memes, which is, a reference to the band Neutral Milk Hotel. A lot of these accounts reference Neutral Milk Hotel because they're kind of like a seminal indie rock band. So The idea with being a meme account is that you're kind of part of an in-group, right? And you've got to demonstrate that you're a part of that in-group. So I don't know if they're doing enough in the branding of this account to really get that across. And that's something you might want to consider. But the content here is exactly what you're trying to do with an account like this. So this first one, humans are complicated. They do things dogs can't understand, like thermodynamics, which is true. Dogs can't understand thermodynamics, at least as far as we know. And it's a little bit funny too. This one, a common meme format, pulling from old cartoons, ridiculous images from old cartoons to make, some kind of a joke. That looks like an ad more than anything else. This one is kind of a commentary about, the intersection of capitalism and tech. The idea that Elon Musk doesn't need you to have a degree if you're working for Tesla, but you might end up just being a crash test dummy for him. This one, a periodic table of elements joke. I was going to tell a joke about sodium, but nah. You get the idea. You're just trying to make people laugh. You're trying to make people engage with, scientific concepts in a way that's, pretty surface level, but is entertaining to people and makes them want to come back for kind of like their daily chuckle or whatever. Again, the memes themselves, you can aggregate them and share them from other places, or, you can make them yourself. So if I'm making memes, I always just use the Instagram post as my background. This is a little bit risky, but I'm going to do it anyway to see what I have in my thing here as possible. So you see I have a bunch of pictures of nuclear reactors. So this is a meme that I made a while back based on a template that was popular. My version of it wasn't very popular, but it's the "some of y'all would melt down in this situation" meme. And I just did the different parts of a nuclear reactor. So yeah, if one of these things was missing, then the nuclear reactor would melt down. That's the joke. So that's the idea that this is the template that I used here. You just pop the template in and then do whatever you want with the template from there. So to find meme templates, it's really easy. So some of you would melt down meme template. And boom, there we go. Very first result. All I have to do is download that image, upload it into Canva, into my uploads, and then I can manipulate it however I want. I can add text, I can add elements, all the stuff that we looked at before. So that's pretty much it, right? The idea is that whatever you decide you want your brand and identity to be, however much you decide you want to be kind of audience facing with that brand, all of the content on your profile and your page has to be geared toward that idea. And we've talked about how that can be something very kind of serious and rooted in your professional ethos and academic ethos, like Dr. Joy. It can be something that tries to, I think, kind of stay in the middle and reach a very broad range of people, like Neil deGrasse Tyson. It can also be something more entertaining, like Nina's profile, something more informative, like these profiles that we looked at on Tumblr and Twitter that are more general, not as audience-facing, and kind of just look to expose people to different scientific concepts that are interesting. Or you can be a meme lord. You can be a science meme lord if you want to do that. So yeah, those are some options. Those are some things to think about. Those are some ways of putting together your profile, of thinking about your profile. Let me know if you've got any questions. You can ask them in the Discord, the AMA, or if we've got a topic where you think it would be a good spot to ask, then you can do that. But yeah, good luck and happy microblogging.